Welcome to Welcome to MindShifters Radio with Dr. Michael Ryce, the Forgiveness Doctor. My name is David Hayes, and I'll be co-hosting with Michael today. And Michael, are you there? Well, he may not have got hooked up just yet. We're having those technical challenges with the cell phones and so forth. And I'm having a little bit of a challenge here in the Ozarks as well. Our router has gone out. Anyway, the MindShifters Radio is based out of the work of Dr. Michael Ryce's Why Is This Happening to Me Again book, and based from the Aramaic language around forgiveness. And what we do is that we get together Monday through Friday at this time, and we take calls on number 646-200-4169. That's 646-200-4169. And we talk about forgiveness, based out of the Aramaic teachings with that. This is a MindShifter support group that there are MindShifter groups throughout the country that tune in, and we answer questions around forgiveness. What is forgiveness, the purpose of it, how the mind works, and we come from several different disciplines of science and theology and, as I said, the Aramaic language. And I don't know if Michael has been able to connect as of yet. Michael, are you on? Okay.
Can you hear me, David?
And maybe Tim. Tim, are you on? Just so I can make sure that I'm on the air.
I'm here, David. Am I hooked up?
Very good. Good, Tim. Nice to have you. How was your Easter, your Resurrection Day?
Wonderful. Wonderful. Families, healthy, loving day. How about yourself?
It was great. We've been having a lot of rain here in the Ozarks. So over the last 4 days, I figure over the last 96 hours, we've had about 35 hours of rain coming down pretty good. And it was a great day. It was good. I got to reflect on several different things about what Michael had said on Friday's show. Were you listening to the show on Friday?
Yes, I certainly was.
Yeah, about the pain and suffering and a difference. And, of course, our show was about shifting the mind, looking at changing different perspectives, the realities that the mind holds. And this is Dr. Tim Hayes, and we're no relation as far as a bloodline. At least I haven't searched it out yet, Tim. But we have been friends and associates and doing Michael's work for several years now. And Dr. Tim does a MindShifters group in Crystal Lake, Illinois, one of the suburbs of Chicago. So if anyone is interested in that area and having a support group, well, that's what it is that we do. Our radio show is about supporting people in order to shift things, to learn forgiveness, what the true meaning of forgiveness is in the Aramaic language. So, Tim, you want to tell a little bit about yourself and how are you doing? What's going on?
Well, I was just going to comment based on what you said, that the most powerful thing for me from Friday's show, one of the things that stood out anyway, was how Michael discussed what is reported to be Yeshua's last words on the cross, and how the Greeks and those who wanted to control people turned that into a message of despair and desperation, as though God the Father had forsaken or just left and abandoned Jesus on the cross, and how Michael, with his work with the ancient Aramaic, has interpreted those final words to be very, very different. And rather than a cry for "why have you forsaken me," but a cry that said to a very intimate form of the word Father, now I get it. Now I know what you set me aside for. Now I know what I was here to demonstrate for all of us in human form, that they can do what they will to the physical body, but with love we can rebuild this energy system, and that there is only one truth, and that is that love. and that now I've been able to see this is the special purpose for which you put me aside, rather than this is how you reject me or this is how you forsake me. And I kept thinking of that all through the weekend, and the message of love and the message of getting rid of anything that's less than love from my energy system, which I have collected over the years or I've inherited from past generations. And that's my job, and that's what the work and the tools Michael provides for us help us do, each and every one.
Yeah, I concur with you so strongly with that, Tim. The first time that I heard Michael say that, it gave me that big aha, that's what it means. And hearing you right now, to me, I think that that's a similar sense of what Yeshua went through when he went, that's what this is about. Kind of, with that same enthusiasm, that same exhilaration of, I understand now, which is in alignment with what makes sense. The truth is so, what's the word even for that? It's so obvious when we experience the truth that there's that realization, and that's what I call the ahas. It's spiritual enlightenment, or it's the awareness of what it really means. And that was one of my major mind shifters as well when I heard that. And, of course, that's what we're here to do, is to support people in looking and see how do they change the realities that they hold in their mind about a certain event or thought or belief, so that they can then see it differently. And as you pointed out, if there's any anger or hostility or fear, and I noticed that just comes from such a fear-based mind, that unless that's looked at differently, any time that it resonates in the brain, then it's going to bring along those fearful feelings and emotions with that. So,
Michael, are you there?
Yet? Hello?
Good morning.
What was that, Tim? Good morning.
Good morning,
hello?
gentlemen.
Hello, Michael. You are there. Great.
Hi, Tim.
So
Hi, David.
We were just sharing with the audience our take on the conversations of last Friday and the thought around that and applying that in our lives and the effect that it has now versus prior to hearing that statement was that. So how was your resurrection day?
It was awesome. We actually spent it out in in Death Valley, which is a pretty interesting place, and it was just a sweet day. I'm sitting here in the desert. I wasn't on the show at the very beginning because we had a reliable phone signal where we were, and then all of a sudden it just disappeared. So I had to drive out into the boonies here a little bit to get a better signal. So, and how are you today, Tim?
Doing very well. Had a lovely weekend with family, and looking forward to another beautiful week. Hopefully a bit less rain, but having a great time.
Well, we're not getting any rain out here in the desert. Anyway, Jeannie, do we have any callers or any questions or thoughts in the chat room, or Tim, as the case may be, we're doing some technological tag team here.
Well, there's nothing going on in the chat room yet, except that Jeannie can hear us talking, so that's good news. And and David and I were just kind of recapping the message of Friday's show, how powerful it was for us, and what each of us took as the most important. And I was relaying the idea of the gift that Jesus received on the cross at the end, rather than the rejection that he experienced, the gift of the aha moment, that this is what his Father had set him aside for. And so David had his own take on that, and that's all we've done so far is just kind of recap. That was a real powerful show on Friday. I'm very glad you chose to talk about that process and how the events of a couple thousand years ago were turned by people to be tools of politics and manipulation, and that the message of the spiritual gift was really kind of lost.
Yeah. Yeah, when I love the genius. Many people think about law as something to do with the rule of a superior, but when you go to the Aramaic, which means in the mind of Yeshua, he had nothing to do. He didn't speak about the rule of a superior. He wasn't talking about some theological monstrosity that wants to run our lives. He was talking about how the eternal forces work and how to maintain a human life. And in the frontal lobes of the brain, there are three filters in Aramaic. One of them was called Rakhma. One of them was called hostility. The other one was fear. And when we look at those teachings through hostility and fear, like anything else, if you look through the fear filter, anything that you see is your mind is going to use data based in threat to build its reality. So we're going to feel threatened. When we go into the hostility filter, whatever object of attention we look at, we're going to be in irritation. When you go into the filter that was called Rakhma in Aramaic, the word was translated as love, and it was the first law. Then what you get to see are those things based in love and truth. And ultimately what we each need to do is review not only our whole lives, everything that we've accepted, but look at these interpretations and these teachings we've been given, especially theologically, through the lens of truth, through the lens of Rakhma. And when Rakhma is the active filter in the mind, everything looks different. If you think about the person that you say, I love you, I cherish you, I will honor you forever, and your mind is showing you all the wonderful things you love about them, and all of a sudden they give you the look, and you go into fear. And then you're feeling threatened by them. Do you see what you love about them anymore? No. What you love about them evaporates. And it's interesting to watch how it becomes all of a sudden, don't touch me, don't come near me, I never want to talk to you again. Where, just 45 seconds later, without realizing the shift that's taken place, 45 seconds earlier it was, oh, I love you so much, I cherish you, I honor you. What made the difference? Shift filters. You see different realities. And Yeshua had the genius to tell us that we need to have Rakhma in our minds when we thought about God, neighbor, and self. And it's got nothing to do with the rule of superior. It's got nothing to do with religion. It's got to do with sanity. It's got to do with everywhere you look through the fear filter, you're going to feel threatened. Everywhere you look through the hostility filter, you're going to feel irritated. Everywhere you look, even in the most dastardly circumstances, you'll see something loving. And you'll have an easier time maintaining a human life. And conflicts tend to disappear in relationships when you have two people who look through Rakhma. If you have one person who's looking through hostility or fear, then they tend to speak words based in hostility or fear that then, for the average person, because they don't have control of their own minds, the average person flips into the same hostility or fear filter, and now you've got one set of words based in hostility or fear bouncing off another, and that's always a downward spiral. You get one set of words bouncing off of the filter Rakhma out of love, and you get an upward spiral. It's just real simple the way it works, and the genius of it is so awesome. And when we start to look at everything in our lives through that filter of truth and the principles of love, everything changes, which is pretty cool.
Well, we did a book club recently where they read the book, The Gospel of Mary Magdalene. And the actual pages of that gospel that they have, the document they have, is very limited. There's only about 8 pages. But out of those 8 pages, there are 3 critical pieces that Mary Magdalene talks about that was Christ's message. And then the whole discussion got into how was this suppressed, why was this suppressed, was it suppressed because she was just a woman, and it was a patriarchal society. And my comment to them was that it was suppressed because of the 3 pieces of Yeshua's teaching that she remembered and was trying to promote. The first piece was the kingdom of God is within you. She called it the Son of God, they called it the Son of God in the male Gospels. She called it the child of true humanity is within you. The next piece was there is no such thing as sin. And the next piece was Yeshua telling them, don't make any rules other than what I've already given you, because you'll just get trapped by them. So on these 3 points alone, they would need to suppress her message, because if they didn't, they couldn't build a big church, they couldn't control people, and they couldn't use fear and intimidation.
And, of course, that message about sin being understanding that there are energies that support life and energies that don't. In the Aramaic, sin simply meant the energies that don't support life, the energies that are off the mark for our energy field. So in the sense that people take on identity of sinner, yeah, that one's so all wet. And so Greek, it's just unbelievable. But in the Aramaic, when Yeshua says to this woman who's been caught in prostitution, go and sin no more, basically saying, that energy doesn't support you. You need to make a shift. And that term sin is an archery term, which means simply off the mark. And we need to stay on track and get back on track if we're off of it. And so certainly an important concept to understand from the Aramaic idea.
Well, and as you said, the people who want to build a big institution or control others aren't really going to want to spread the message of Yeshua, who said, know the truth and the truth shall set you free.
That's for sure. Yeah, it's
well, along that line, Michael and Tim, they can't. It's impossible for them to teach that unless that they are holding it themselves. The only thing that they can then teach is what it is that they're holding in their consciousness of what it means. And so I think that it gets to the place that for myself, and I speak for people that I've been associated with in doing their healing work, that they have to get to the place of willing to be wrong, or to willing to look at it differently. For if they are not willing to look at it differently, the only thing that they can teach is what it is that's resonating in their mind, and so therefore that just reinforces it, and even on a cellular level, that they strengthen that belief.
Yeah, that's the whole crux of interviewing your every moment of your life from the perspective of truth. And when I'm off base, when I'm in error, that means that I'm going to suffer in some way, shape, or form, because when I'm in error, I don't understand how these laws work. When you recognize that laws are never broken, that it's we who get broken in avoidable collision, if we're in that filter called Rakhma, we understand how those eternal forces work. When we're in hostility or fear, they become invisible and unavailable to us. If you look at the statement, in the first beatitude where we're told it says, those who are poor in spirit, the word poor in Aramaic, one fly speck on the word home changed it to poor. There was nothing about being poor in spirit in the Aramaic. They said those whose home is in the eternal forces. If our home is in a mind based in hostility, fear, rage, and grief, then we're going to tend, unless we're with somebody who's really conscious, we're going to tend to resonate those very energies in that other person. And again, the conversation degrades from there. Whereas if someone actually lives in that mind of love and lives in those eternal forces, then all it's going to take is a phrase or a sentence to start to move the conversation into an upward direction. I know that with the work we've been doing out here in Las Vegas and in Pahrump, Nevada, there's a physician here that we've been working with, and one of the things that he's expressed over and over again to people is how awesome and amazing it is that he just has to offer people, he has one solution to offer people. He offers them forgiveness. And he's like, it doesn't matter what their problem is. Because once you're drawn out of the hostility and fear that creates the downward spiral, you start to move into an upward spiral. And so the solution becomes not always easy to apply, not simplistic, but simple. And the simple principle is You got to live a human life. And when your home is in those eternal forces, and those eternal forces, it's easy to discover what they are. Of course, the non-being mind, what we call the mind based in hostility or fear, the mind of non-being, will just do its best to keep confounding things and keep the hostility and fear going and keep people in doubt and questioning and wondering and, what's the truth? It's really easy to establish what the eternal forces are. All you have to do is hold a newborn child. And you know what forces you're designed to live in. If your home is in those forces, and they're the words of the first beatitude, by being in those eternal forces, which obviously we would describe in our human language as love, then what happens is we shift into a different game than the game of hostility or fear. When we live in those eternal forces, we're guided, we're connected, and we live a whole different life. When hostility or fear is active, we're outside of those eternal forces. And now we are blind. We are spiritually blind. And, of course, confusion and upset and distortion rule there. And you go back and you listen to those words about the first law, and the first law is that of keeping that condition in your mind. And it's not a religious idea. It's the most brilliant, genius thing I've ever seen. Imagine if we had a country of 370 or so million people, and everybody lived in a mind of love. Could there be a murder rate? Could there be theft? Could there be crime? It couldn't happen. And it's not a religious love. It's imagine if 370 million people, if everybody you walked down the street and saw, whether you were in New York or Theodosia, Missouri, if everybody were living in a connected space of love, in that newborn space. Now, of course, the world says, that's not practical, that's not the real world. Well, excuse me, that is the real world. Of course, it's hard to imagine if you've not had the experience. If very shortly after you came into your human form, and we all came in exactly the same way, and that is as the active presence of love, if our world pounded into us its hostilities and fears, it tells us, it's not practical to live there. Excuse me. It is absolutely the most practical thing in the world. And if you have a comment or question for us, we would be delighted if you would call in. Our number is 646-200-4169, 646-200-4169. And, of course, a natural next question is, okay, that sounds great, Michael, but how do I get there? Well, the most important tool, the most important key to getting there is you've got to remove what is unlike that. You've got to remove the generational hostilities and fears. And you do that through the process of forgiveness. And forgiveness has nothing to do with letting other people off the hook because you have some form of hostility or fear in you. It has nothing to do with letting them off the hook or forgiving them because you're seeing through those filters and you're in some kind of trauma. What it has to do is standing in the middle of what yesterday was trauma, being the active presence of love, connected to love, and dissolving that trauma. That's the possibility if one has that experience. And so what we're here to support people in doing is stepping into the active space of love, building communities that are actively based in love, which means that we're going to heal all of the hostilities and fears in our own minds and in the minds of those around us, and we're going to start to live the way real humans were designed to live. That's our objective here. That's our support for you. And we are delighted to be here on MindShifters Radio. We say a huge accolade and thank you to Carol Guy, who's facilitated us putting this show together on her Angel Radio Network. And we're here to support you in learning to forgive everything that is in you that is unlike love. If you haven't yet accessed, if you're new to the show and you haven't yet accessed the forgiveness tool, you can go to our website, www.whyagain.com. That's whyagain.com. And on the right-hand side, you'll see a link that says Download Worksheets. If you click on that link, you'll find there are many links. There are many different worksheets that we do, but the core ones, the beginning point is the first link is a set of instructions for doing the reality management process. The second link is the actual worksheet itself. So we invite you to download those things, start to work with it. You can also download the book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again, free, in English, German, Russian, Spanish, Farsi. We have several other translations underway. And we're here to support you in standing in your world as the active presence of love.
Well, as we do this work in the MindShifters group, the core for me is one of the core statements in that reality management worksheet is that the truth is my reality is strictly internal, unique to me, and is created out of my own thoughts. And I wonder if you could say something, Michael, about how that happens, your definition for reality versus actuality.
Sure, great question. David, did you have something to put in there?
Well, what came across to me was that we often bring up several different topics and things that we talk about when it comes to the laws, when it comes to the cellular understanding of things, and we do come back to, and as you pointed out, it's very important to begin with the reality management, the forgiveness worksheet. And there's also available that you can order DVDs or CDs that cover those particular areas in a couple of hour workshops live workshops that have gone on. And when we talk about laws so much, and rarely do we mention about that there is a video that you can view that's called The Laws of Living. If you're interested in understanding how to get into alignment with that, that's a really great support tool for that. And I was watching Bruce Lipton this morning, last night and this morning, and what a fabulous description that he does. So if people are looking for how does this affect my health, how does this, and what is it that I need to get in alignment with, those may be two DVDs or audio CDs that you'd like to get them to listen to.
All right, and we also have a caller, Michael, on the phone, area code 607. Okay, welcome 607. Tim, we'll get back to your question in a minute. We'll see what 607 has to say. What's your name and where are you calling from? 607, you're on the line. Well, I believe it was, his name was Matthew. Matthew, are you there?
No, it's Richard.
Richard?
Oh, hello, Richard.
It's Richard.
Are you the Richard that I wrote the book about?
I don't think so, but, deep down I sure feel that way.
Well, it's interesting, and for those who aren't familiar with my book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And again, you can download it free on the website. The character's name is Richard, and so Richard, you have a thought or a question for us?
Well, I just wanted to let you know that I'm back on the road. I missed being in touch with you guys over the weekend, and I'm happy to be listening in again, and love the concepts that you have, and looking forward to doing some more study on my own and working with the worksheets and reading the book. So just letting you know, I'm doing my work, my homework, and I'm looking forward to the day when I can let that fear space die in me and be risen in the hope of the glory of the truth.
Yes. You got my support on that one, sir. Have a safe journey. Where are you heading to now?
I'm heading back east finally. I'm in the Sierra Nevadas on Route 80 heading towards Reno right now.
Ah, okay. So you're not dropping down toward Las Vegas.
I don't think so. I really need to stay on the road. I'm supposed to be back east by Friday, so I need to push it. So someday we'll meet. I'm looking forward to the day when we have the opportunity.
Cool. Well, travel safely. Don't push it too hard, and we'll look forward to keeping in touch, Richard. Thanks for your visit to Heartland, and glad you're picking up the tools and putting them to work and share them with somebody else.
I will do. I already have.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Blessings. So, Tim, you had a question about the idea of the difference between reality and actuality. You know, we live in a world, and I don't care what room you're in and what happens. Imagine yourself in a room, and let's just, whatever's happening, 10 minutes of events, and then let's have everybody in the room stand up and speak about their experience, what they saw happen. I guarantee that two people are going to have the same descriptors, because no two of us at any moment experience the same reality. And so everybody's reality at every moment is a small fragment of what's actually going on in the world, and it's something that's constructed by the mind. There's an interesting video that you can Google and watch by a woman named Jill Bolte Taylor. And Jill was a neuroscientist, and basically what happened was she got up one morning, got on her exercise bike, and realized as a neuroscientist that she was having a stroke, a left brain stroke. And she describes how her whole world fell apart, how everything her mind constructed for her, her reality began to dissolve. You know, this woman's a genius, and she can't read the numbers on a telephone because her left brain construct is gone. She's trying to. She has right brain faculty, and the way she gets to dial the phone, and what saved her life was she could recognize the shapes of the numbers. She didn't know what the numbers were. Numbers are a construct of the left brain. But she was able to recognize the shapes, and by looking in her phone directory, she knew somebody who could help her. And by looking at the shapes of each of the numbers, she was able to figure out how to dial the phone. Everything that we call reality when we look at pictures in our mind are generated internally, included, for instance, in that case, the pictures of the numbers, for her to know what the numbers meant. That's all a construct in the mind. And if our constructs, and this is, again, we're back to the genius of that first law, love God, neighbor, and self, and nothing to do with religion, that you keep a condition called love in your mind, a filter, so that your mind constructs its highest and best reality. When we look at a picture in our minds, you know, if we listen to Einstein says this: on such things as matter, we have been all wrong. What we have heretofore called matter is energy whose vibrations have been so lowered as to be perceptible to the senses. There is no matter. So if you could look out at what your eyes show you, and you think you're looking out, but you're really looking in, if you could look out, what would happen is, if you could see what was actually there, you'd see this whirring mass of electrons, protons, neutrons, and light. You would not see physical substance. The appearance of physical is a picture constructed in the mind. And the actual world is made of, as Einstein says, energy. So we have this digital world, and we have an analog converter. Our analog converter, called the mind, converts the digital signals that come in according to the content held in our minds, and it presents pictures. But the pictures are internal constructs. If we have a mind based in hostility or fear, then our internal constructs are degraded. Their quality is lowered, and the advice they give us are always poor advice. You know, one of the questions that Jeannie will ask when we open the Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop is how many have ever done something they regret? And then identify what you were feeling when you did whatever it was that you say now you regret. And so she'll make a list on the board, and it's always things like rage and sadness and grief and pain and trauma and hatred and vengeance and jealousy, et cetera, et cetera. They're always hostility and fear, people who are out of the filter of love. And again, nothing to do with religion. It's simple human intelligence. Human intelligence is gone when we go into hostility or fear. You know, people will say with the atrocities that happen around the globe, how could human beings do such a thing? My offering is human beings couldn't do such a thing. It's not possible. But if we come into a world where our minds are structured through hostility or fear, we eradicate human life, and now, according to those structures, those realities in the mind, we can justify any behavior, the worst atrocities, and the people who are doing the atrocities man, this is good stuff. This is because the mind's perceptual output is degraded. That first law, love, when you look at all objects of attention, is a way to keep yourself inoculated against non-human insanity. And so a good example of that, I'm sitting out here in the desert right now, and I'm looking off in the distance at some mountains, and I'll never forget the first time I saw a mirage. Driving across the desert, and there's this mountain range, and the person I didn't recognize it. I didn't know anything about a mirage. Mirages, of course I'd heard of them, but this person I was driving with pointed and said, "You see from there over? You see, that's a mirage." I said, "Well, what do you mean? It's the same mountains as over there." "No, it's not." And what happens is, as we drive a little closer and get close enough to see that what's rising off the surface of the earth is heat, the brain, here's my take on a mirage, the brain looks at these mountains over here that our brain is representing accurately, and it says, we can't really tell what's over there in the distance, but there's some kind of energetic movement, and it's waves of heat coming off the earth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to structure a picture that is logical to me, that matches these mountains, and I'm going to put a set of mountains over there where there aren't any. So the brain literally sees mountains where there are none. Someone who's in desperate need of water, according to those goals, it's a state of hypnosis, the brain says, I need to see water, I need to have water, and the brain produces a mirage, a picture of something that isn't there. Now, as you drive closer, and you can see that it's actually just heat waves raising off of the desert floor, and it's so interesting. If you've never seen it, it's awesome. What actually happens is the picture your brain presented of the mountains that weren't there just actually starts to crumble. I mean, it literally crumbles. At least my experience of it was, it literally crumbled and fell apart. And all that were left were these heat waves coming off the earth. Now, our brain's pictures are created to a great degree by expectation. And if we live in a world of hostility or fear, and we expect someone to come along in hostility or fear in a certain circumstance, then we'll get to experience people who we think are hostile and fearful. We project, because what they resonate in us is our hostility and fear, we project something that isn't there. I mean, how many in our audience have ever been accused of saying or doing something that you absolutely never said or did? And I guarantee the point at which somebody accused you of that is a point where they were in some form of hostility or fear, because the perceptual output, the pictures the mind creates, are degraded when hostility or fear is active. And so that's where you get those kinds of accusations. People are literally living in an hallucination. A mirage is nothing but another word for an hallucination. Anyone who's in hostility or fear, literally, anytime I'm in hostility or fear, I'm in an hallucination. And what I need to do, first order of business, is get out of the hallucination. How do I do that? I get back to a mind based in love. When I do, my hallucinations disappear. I mean, it's awesome when you see that happening, in family systems, in relationships. It's absolutely awesome to see what happens when one person can absolutely, truly come to a space of connected love in the space of others' hostilities and fears. And what tends to occur is those hostilities and fears begin to dissolve. And it's most amazing to watch how reliably that happens when one taps into the teaching. Our phone number, if you have a question or a thought for us, is area code 646-200-4169. We would love to hear from you. If you have a question, comment, thought, pick up the phone. Give us a call. Do we have any questions in the chat room, Tim?
Nothing so far. There is just a comment from Matthew that we need to change from the love of power to the power of love. And
you got that one.
And Jeannie was commenting that we're holding out for critical mass when enough of us make a change so that the whole world changes. And Matthew agrees there's a shift happening worldwide, and we are the change, and we need to realize this.
Yes, that's what we're here for sure to do, is to support and empower that change. That's the whole reason we do MindShifters Radio. We're blessed to be able to do this. The fact that we're on the road so much and we go into so many cities, and then in the past it's always kind of been a hole in our work. If somebody didn't start a support group when we were in a city and we left there, then there wasn't support for the people who had done the workshops. And now, fortunately, through MindShifters Radio, we have the opportunity to continue the support 5 days a week, 1 hour a day. We have access. Anybody on the planet can access us. Anywhere in the world that has internet access or telephone access can pick up the phone and call us, or on the internet, share their thoughts and questions, and we are absolutely here to support you in doing your work. And that is primarily the work of forgiveness. Of course, we've created a whole host of tools. As they was saying earlier, there are DVDs where there are actually 15 different workshops now on DVD. You can look under the product catalog and on the YAGN site if you want to check into that. And of course, the most important one, I believe, is the Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop, where we talk about the process of Aramaic forgiveness, the internal process of forgiveness. David, do you have Terry there with you this morning?
He hasn't returned yet. He should be here at any moment. I expect him to be rolling in. He had to go on that errand in Gainesville, get us a router. We out off the internet right now.
Yeah, I wish we'd talked before he left, because you could have gone in my house and gotten the router and taken it out there and hooked it up. But
okay. Yep.
So once again, love of truth is the antidote for blockage of truth. Whenever we're in any form of hostility or fear, we're in blockage of truth. And the idea is to open up that blockage of truth space by love of truth. And we had a question from someone who had a challenge with a child that was in great amounts of upset, started to get in trouble at school around the age of 10 or 11, and then being in trouble was taken out to be homeschooled, and seemed to be living in a lot of rage. And one of the things to recognize is that rage, hostility, anger is nothing but a drug. It's never primary. It's always secondary. And it can be a tough drug to break free from, because it's free and the supplier's internal. And with young people, a lot of times the pain of not being able to control their environment is covered up by that drug. And what the child who's pointing anger at someone is attempting to do is one of two things: either control the person they're pointing the anger at, or they're in essence saying to that person, you need to be responsible for and change the content of my pained mind. And when the adult that's present can move to the space of active love, there's a different energetic dynamic created rather than bouncing off of. The tendency when one person goes into hostility is everybody goes into hostility. That's just the old law of resonance. And when one chooses to say, no, I'm going to stay connected to love, and if you rage at me and it brings something up in me, I'm going to forgive, I'm going to remove that, sooner or later I'm going to get to the state where I can truly hold active love present for that raging individual. And if I can do that, what's going to happen is the simple exposure to the actual active presence of love is going to begin to dissolve the hostility and the pain in the child, or any person who's in hostility or fear. And so being able to hold that space, of course, if you get a kid that's being really outrageous, it can be a tough thing to do. It'll make you look at everything genetic that you've ever held about children or people in rage and fear, because the primary root of that is some form of fear. And always over the years, whenever we could get somebody, one of the objects of the intensive work that we do is to get things stirring, is to get things moving. So if someone moves into that place of rage, and then for just one moment will trust his face and drop their rage, what they instantly go into is, as they drop down levels, they instantly go into their grief, their pain, their loss, whatever it is. And by having one person in the space who has that love present, who has Rakhma active in their minds, what takes place is the presence of that love begins the dissolution of the pain, of the hostility, of the fear. It is an interesting process to watch how it dissolves, how it moves, and it's absolutely awesome to see that happen. So, Tim, do you have any input for someone who's dealing with a child who's got lots of anger coming up, and to the point where they've been taken out of school to be homeschooled so that they're not exposed to the school system? There's a possibility that some of it may have had to do with learning challenges, a school system that teaches one form of learning with a student that does not learn that way. I think most students that are labeled learning disabled are really in classrooms where the teachers are teaching disabled, and the child isn't really being fed. Their genius, their intelligence isn't really being fed in a way that they're ready to be fed. And boredom sets in, and the boredom tends to lead to, sooner or later, to anger. If the boredom, if a child is chastised for being in boredom, instead of the teacher saying, "Gee, Johnny, I apologize that I can't keep you interested and keep it going," it becomes Johnny's fault. "Why are you so bored in my classroom? You should be interested in every word I have to say." And, of course, the child being chastised then tends to bounce back with some of the same kind of energy, and the hostility tends to develop from there. It's a spiral. But do you have any suggestions, Tim, from your practice and working with children and parents?
Well, one of them was the same thing you were just talking about. There was a fascinating book written, I forget the year and the author, but I can get access to it for you. It's called The Da Vinci Method, and essentially it talks about the type of genius that Leonardo da Vinci was, and how the traits that he exhibited, aside from the creative genius, were all about traits that would not fit at all well in a traditional classroom. If Da Vinci were in a classroom, he would have been labeled, and he would have been drugged, and he would have been shut out. Yeah. And they discuss how if you are trying to suppress these traits within yourself, and you consciously try to be other than who you naturally were creatively meant to be, that you can bring on the depression, the attention deficit disorder, the manic depression, the rage. And so it's a fascinating look at what those traits are, and how parents and adult individuals who may be like that can learn to identify their creative genius and then celebrate it and work with it rather than label it and try to suppress it. So that was one thing. The other thing is the idea of what you were talking about before you mentioned the difficulty with the children is, if the expectation from the parents is positive and loving and nurturing, then the result for the child is going to be very different than if the parents and or the teachers, because of some interactions, have come to view this child as angry and bitter and resentful and disruptive. Then their expectations are just going to amplify that within the child. So a lot of good parenting skills work has parents operating from the assumption of compliance and saying to the child as they walk out of the room, "Thank you for cleaning your room," even before the room is cleaned. "Thank you for getting along well with your brother while I have to take this phone call." So if they're holding the space of love as the parent, the probability increases that the child will respond in a loving way.
Absolutely. Yeah, the different styles of learning, basically this culture is pretty much geared for one style of learning, And anybody that doesn't fit is labeled, or I should say mislabeled, as somehow deficient and made to feel like, they're stupid, they're not good enough, etc. I remember Julie Haverstick in her book, Healing Children, Loving Children, which is one of the books that we published based on this work. She had the kids do a target, and her scoring system, instead of A being you are the A student and D being you are the you are the poor student, what she did was she had the kids come up with a set of words that went along with the A, B, C, D, E. And it was, if I remember correctly, A was always on target. And so it became a thing of what we're looking to do is be on target. We're not calling the kid who's not on target stupid. We're just saying you're not on target. Here's the information we want to learn. So if Johnny was the D student, Johnny didn't get labeled D failure. He became D darn far from the target. Hey, I got work to do. I need to catch up with myself. And I'll never forget, Julie shared a story about one day the power had been out in her home and her alarm clock was electric, and so it went off late. And so she called the school. She was a grade 1 teacher at that point. She always taught kindergarten and grade 1. And she's in an inner city school, really rough neighborhood in Dayton, Ohio. And she calls her vice principal and says, oh, my alarm didn't go off. Our power went out last night. I'm going to be late. Would you please get somebody to look in on my kids? Well, she got to school, if I remember correctly, it was about 10 o'clock in the morning. Maybe next time she's on the show so that I get the details right. But it was like something like 10 o'clock that she finally got to the classroom. And when she went to the classroom, there were no teachers around, and the kids are sitting quietly doing their work. And one of the teachers comes over, and it's like, I don't believe this. Well, what do you mean? So, we checked in with them, and 2 of the kids were handing out papers for what were the class assignments. And when this other teacher said, oh, do you need any help? The vice principal had forgotten to send anybody there. This teacher, do you need any help? Said, no, we just hope we're doing the right work for Mrs. Haverstick. And they were about doing their work. And at 10 o'clock when she arrived, they're sitting at their desks and they're all doing their work. Inner motivation instead of outward control. And that's the kind of classroom that Julie was able to create. It's absolutely awesome. When we honor children for who they are, and you look at, if you jump on the website, you'll see the I Am Somebody poem that Julie came up with, based on recognizing the truth about who we are as human beings, and who we are as individual and unique. In fact, there's an awesome process when we experience ourselves as who we actually are, and when we start to function out of who we were designed to be.
Well, Michael, you have that where you sell the card, which has the commitment on one side and the who am I am somebody on the other side. And let me just take a moment and read that. The children's who am I? I
Yes.
am somebody. I am bright, capable, and lovable. I am teachable and learn easily. I tell the truth, and I'm a gentle listener. I respect myself and others. I am cooperative and responsible for my feelings and choices. I see the highest and best in myself and others and support that with my thoughts, words, and actions. I use time wisely because it is valuable. I am the best me I can be each day. I am somebody. I am love. And I use that with a number of my children that are in grade school and actually in the kindergarten, grade school age. And I use that in cooperation with some other loving techniques and mind-body energy work. And I give them a card and ask them to put it up in their room and ask their parents to support them whenever they start to get upset, that the children learn to take a time out, go to their room, read that, and do some of their breathing techniques. And I get fabulous comments back from the parents and the children from that work.
Right. Yeah, it's awesome when we wake up to who we are. And imagine if, when you listen to what Tim just read, imagine that your teachers, when you were a kid, had been brought up with that. I am somebody, I am love. Imagine your parents, if they've been brought up as, I am somebody, I am love. Imagine yourself. How different would our lives have been if we were brought up with, I am somebody, I am love, rather than labels like sinner or stupid or incapable or you'll never amount to anything or you've never been any good or, the myriad of projections that happen in the world. And it's just time for us to clean it up. It tends to be one of those power person issues, and we tend to live out of whatever dynamics our power person lived out of.
Okay, Michael, Julie's on the phone.
Oh, awesome. Hey, good morning, Julie.
Good morning, Michael. How are you?
I'm blessed and highly favored. How about you?
I'm good. And I was just tuning in, and I heard you chit-chatting about the target and about who am I and things like that, so I thought I would just say hello. And actually what happened that day when I didn't come in, it was almost 10:30 because my garage door wouldn't open, and they had totally forgotten, but all the teachers met me in the hallway telling me how the children were being totally responsible, and they were just so surprised that they handled everything. They took their breakfast tickets, they went to breakfast, because most of them are on free breakfast, and then they passed out their work, and they were just wanting to be responsible. It was amazing. Yep.
Well, what the number of lives you touched in your tenure as a teacher, Julie, in those kindergarten and grade 1 classrooms, I think it would be really interesting to do a follow-up and research project. There's on the front of the book, Healing Children, Loving Children, there's a picture of a young boy who did a self-portrait, his before and after. Would you care to share a little bit about what that process was for you and that particular set of pictures?
Well, there was a little fellow that came near the end of the year, and we're getting close to the end of the time. That's why I was wondering. He came near the end of the year, probably about 8 weeks before school's over, and he had all kinds of problems. He was, I think I was doing first grade, and he was like 8 years old, and he had been kicked out of kindergarten, had been kicked out of the other first grade, had torn up the classroom that he was coming from, had been kicked off the bus, so he was a major problem. And when he got into my room, he started going down on his hands and knees and biting the children's feet, and I just didn't know what to do. And so then he went underneath my desk and stayed there for quite a while. So I had his parents come in, and we started doing worksheets every night. They were more than willing to work with me because they didn't know what to do. And he did worksheets and got very, very efficient at the worksheets that are in my book and began to teach the other children, and he was a bit of a mentor. And he did really well. The energy shifted, and he was able to, bond with somebody for once. And, because, I don't know, I must have just created that safeness or that safety net for him. So he bonded with me, and, he just had a pretty good year. He finished it off with doing pretty well because in the beginning I couldn't even trust him to leave my room. The first time he left my room and he went to the bathroom, he had the whole bathroom torn up. He was about the most unpredictable child I ever had. But
and then I believe it was the next year or 2 years later you had another experience with him. Would you care to share that?
Yeah.
Well, Michael, pardon me, you have about 60 seconds left.
Yeah.
Quick, go ahead.
We'll talk again about it, all right?
Oh, I think you got time to just quickly put it in, the story where he came back to your classroom.
Oh, yeah. Well, one day I got a knock on the door, and he was in second grade, and he was asking me could he have some worksheets because he was having difficulty handling himself in second grade. And I gave him some, and then the teacher got very, very upset that he, was responsible enough to look for something to help him. And they started to process him out and put him in severe behavior disorder class.
Yeah, bizarre. Anyway, that's Teaching Disabled, and I certainly acknowledge you for the way that you teach, Julie. And I think we're probably down to a few seconds. Thank you for jumping on the line and sharing with us. We are blessed by your presence, Dr. Tim, David. I think our show is just about to close, and we hold the space for the best year yet of your eternal lives. And please bring somebody with you tomorrow and help us to grow the show. Blessings. Have a great day.
Namaste.